made sense for us to explore it as well. Is that consistent with what you've seen?
Yeah, it's very consistent with what I've seen. It's just, I think there's going to be a lot of mergers and consolidation and what have you in the space. I think who the cloud platform is going to end up being. Is it going to be a diversified market? Is it going to be highly centralized? Is there going to be one platform that's more popular than others? It's just too early to tell. And in my experience, I don't see a lot of people really eagerly jumping on that. Thinking right now, just this concept of stateless compute is still something, most organizations that I deal with are somewhere along the virtualization path, and they'd like to get towards stateless. And then you think about, cloud-based operating systems where you're really, distributing jobs on an individual job basis to different nodes. That's still very far, and it's still something where they're not really have firm plans on, because it is such a new market and a new paradigm.
Well, I think to your point, we're very much at a stage where the unit of computation is the VM. And
That's right.
People have yet to really figure out how the new application architectures are really can be constructed to take advantage of the cloud infrastructure. So
and we're still kind of missing the language, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of it's built around Java, and there's a lot of discomfort with Java as an enterprise platform for different environments and performance and what have you. And then a lot of speculation as to what will be possible with HTML5, but we still have a lot of Apple's really bullish on what they can do with HTML5, but it's still gray, and Yahoo's talking about spinning out Hadoop and or at least their instantiation of it. Right. So a lot to be done, but I think being where you guys at right now, that nice mix. One of the things I really like about it is it makes it possible for an enterprise to come and say, hey, I have this and that need, and I have one partner that I can meet with that can manage all those needs. So I think it's a great offering, a lot of differentiation in the space, and a huge growing market, and so it's an exciting time. Any new technologies? I saw one OpenFlow is a big topic this year. I don't know what investigation you've done with it, but I did see when I was at the Dell booth earlier, they were doing a demonstration of more of a concept. They have an implementation, but it's not actually on the roadmap yet. But what it did is it used OpenFlow protocol to it is meant for infrastructure as a service provider environment. So basically the customer side, they have Dell's management software, which is kind of like vCenter. And it would reach out to the cloud, find a compute node, and pull it into their management window, if you will. And we used OpenFlow in that they had their OpenFlow controller reach out to what could conceivably be a IAAS provider's OpenFlow controller, and it created a tunnel directly from that virtual machine to the customer environment. Sure. And so it essentially, I think, took that IAAS to the next level, and that this is essentially on your LAN. Is that you have a private dedicated tunnel from that virtual machine. It's not a lot different. I'm assuming in a lot of IaaS environments you're still running well, it depends on the environment, but you can still run a VPN and essentially extend the customer's network. But I think that brings the extensibility to the next level where you can do it on a per host basis. Do you see a lot of, whether it's OpenFlow or other new security technologies that might allow new workloads and more customers to really extend your offerings in the future?
So we're keeping an eye on OpenFlow. Certainly that type of flexibility is very appealing for us. I don't know that it would always be used in exactly the situation that you described, although it could be. I think one of the things to keep in mind in your description there is, are there going to be enough use cases where you want to have a host that's so physically located in a different location from the other part of the application environment? So one of the things that people have experienced with the cloud is, let's take the example of the software as a service vendor that I mentioned earlier, where it started in the cloud, everything was in the cloud, later decided that I wanted to disaggregate the tiers where I had co-location used for the database, and now I want to have my web instances in the cloud to handle the burstiness of the application. In theory, you could use something like OpenFlow to create a single application environment between those two areas. What we do find from people we talk to is that they're paying a latency penalty going over the internet between those two locations. And so they like the idea of being able to disaggregate the application into multiple tiers because there may be logical reasons to do that. But they need to have a low enough latency that it actually functions a single application platform. And so the way that we're addressing that in many cases is we can have all the flavors of IT deployment within the same four walls. So you could have co-location, managed hosting, cloud inside the same four walls in certain geographic locations. And then you can actually stitch things together in a way that's quite interesting because latency is so low between those different flavors.
Awesome. Okay. And there's a lot of regulatory compliance and different security initiatives that are preventing certain applications from being moved to the cloud. Do you see any progress being made there that are, if you're a security conscious organization, or if you're worried about, I saw one company did a press release, they have a PCI 2.0 compliant cloud. Any progress being made in those fronts that are going to allow more secure conscious customers and applications to be able to move?
Good question. I think a lot of it is it's going to be a maturity level for both the perception from the enterprise side and the capabilities from the service provider side. So PCI is a great example where initially if you're going to do credit card processing and you're worried about having the credit card information, you would actually want to lock that up on site. That was the highest level of security. PCI came along, service providers could get certified as being a PCI compliant service provider, which is something we've actually recently done ourselves. People have gotten more comfortable with having that layer exist inside of a service provider. Of course, with other things that they do on the enterprise side to still get full PCI compliance. I think that we'll see similar sorts of trends over time with other types of compliance certification, like a HIPAA or something like that. Ultimately, will all that move to the cloud? I think we can get to a point where people will feel comfortable enough that the cloud can handle some of those compliance concerns. But I don't think it addresses the discussion we had earlier, which is, does it always make sense for all that stuff to be in the cloud? So, for example, if you have a HIPAA compliant application that is not particularly bursty, that has some sort of specialized setup that you've done yourself, it probably doesn't make sense to put that in the cloud, right? You actually want to have your own gear, you've got it locked up, you know how to run that stuff. And so I think that we'll wind up seeing a lot of specialized applications not migrate fully to the cloud. Now, in that same situation, let's say hypothetically we wanted to field lots of disparate requests from an application that had to be HIPAA requirement, but maybe you could download a video or something like that explaining some aspect of your healthcare. Well, that video may not need to be locked up in a HIPAA compliant environment. You want it distributed close to the end user in a CDN or from a cloud environment to handle the burstiness of it and have high performance. So that's a mixture environment where parts of it are compliant, parts of it are not, but you want the option of stitching those together for different use cases.
Yes.
Well, great. I mean, I think I've taken up enough of your time. Again, we're here talking to InterNAP about some of their new announcements at Interop this year, and 100% SLA for infrastructure service provider offering, or infrastructure as a service offering. And I think everything sounds great. A lot of strong points of differentiation for InterNAP. So
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
look forward to seeing a lot of growth for you guys. Thanks a lot.